This video is brought to you by Devout Decals, makers of reusable Catholic art for your home altar, your bedroom, and your home classroom.
It seems that every Lent it is my unfortunate duty to report to you that somewhere in Europe, some sort of blasphemous art display is put up in a cathedral or high-profile parish, meant to, for whatever reason, challenge our senses and to make us think deeper about our faith. This is always what the excuse is, some variation of that. Last year, this happened in Austria, where a artist, we'll put those in quotes, placed an image of what he called the Sacred Heart. He gave it to a bishop who had it placed in his cathedral. This image of the Sacred Heart was a pig's heart, surrounded by thorns. I don't understand the thinking behind such a blasphemous image. No, I won't put it on the screen for you. I did that enough last year, thank you very much. But this year we had a similar story happen in Italy, a little town called Carpi. And in that town, a priest with the full knowledge of the bishop placed an image, a series of art pieces really, but the most high profile of these was an image of our blessed Lord having been freshly taken down from the cross, having an unspeakable act of a James Martin variety performed on him. Again, after he had been taken down from the cross. This, as you might expect, caused some backlash in the Italian community. In fact, it made news throughout Italy and into neighboring countries. There was very little reporting on it outside of Italy, except for here on this channel and on Frank Walker's Canon 212, which I recommend you read if you want to keep up with the news. But this story culminated in the artist, one Mr. Saltini, a devoted atheist. Somebody decided to take their ire and their angst out on him. We do not endorse such things. Cannot do such things. However, that happened. And they also damaged some of the artwork of his. And we'll put artwork in quotes every time we say it in reference to his work. The display closed, and it closed early, thanks be to God, as a consequence of this. And so now we will talk about the latest update on this. A statement was issued by an Italian news outlet and republished by Marco Tossati on his website. Tossati is an Italian journalist with deep ties to the Vatican. He's got great sources there. He was, before anybody else was publishing Vigano's letters, Tossati was publishing them in Italian. Many of the letters, for those of you who've been watching this channel for a long time, that I would bring to you years ago that no one else was publishing, they came from Tossati. So we're going to go over this piece. This is a statement published by the president of an Italian news outlet that had been covering this. And I want you to see if this makes any sense, not just in terms of the actual story that I've been reporting on, but in the larger context of things going on in the church. Whenever you see Bishop Olson in Texas crushing religious for essentially dubious charges and participating in the ongoing crushing of women religious and just religious orders in general, mostly for property reasons, or if you see this in terms of the religious education conference that happens every summer in Los Angeles with the full knowledge and support of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, often led by one, Pastor Jimmy Martin of the Jesuit Church, or all these other kinds of things that happen in the United States and in any other Western country. Take the art out of this for a moment and think of any other blasphemies and sacrileges committed by men who are in the clergy or by high-profile laity, and see if the sentiment makes any sense to you. Besides the damage, the mockery. On the sidelines of the end of a mockery. We learn with gratitude and relief of the decision to close Carpi's controversial Gratia Plena exhibition early, thus ending the unprecedented decision to have it exhibited in a consecrated church by entrusting the performance to an artist who, in the catalog, introduces himself as one for whom, quote, perhaps chaos has always been one of the reasons for my karst longing for deeper meaning, and claims to have an imperturbable atheism, a distinct preference for disruption, and, sadly, religious doctrine may represent the greatest gift to atheism. After all, what could have been expected from the very title of the interview, which describes him practically as Andrea Saltini, doubt as a belief system? Instead, it is certainty. Now that the curtain has finally fallen, the desire to pray to heal the wounds of an attack is violent as it is sibylline, since it is hidden between the folds of an alleged artistic justification, on the most sacred symbols and representations of the Catholic faith. Regardless of the developments in the prosecutor's investigation into the unidentified individual who damaged one of the works on display, whose gesture probably lies at the root of even the security reasons for the early closure of the exhibition, it is good, however, that this happens in the fullness of truth. Love for the Church prevents one from lashing out against the diocesan ordinary, to whose authority due respect is due, or against all the creators who decided and oversaw the performance itself. But it cannot censure the condemnation of the unhappy words which, in the press release issued by the diocese to make the sad announcement, convey stigma and accusations towards the thousands of Catholics and non-Catholics throughout Italy who have genuinely reacted with sincere prayers of reparation, peaceful protests, and heartful appeals to yet another abuse of the symbols of the faith by those who too often, entrenching themselves behind an elitist clericalism, claim to subvert the natural sense of decency, simple good taste, and respect for what our religion depicts. Love of truth, therefore, cannot keep silent that in addition to the vulness that lingers in the hearts of most, space has also been negligently given to depictions that, moreover, have nothing original about them. Having done the appropriate checks, in the absence, moreover, of an obvious quotation or references that in such cases must be indicated when presenting any new work when taking inspiration from other authors, Mr. Saltini's paintings appear for the most part incredibly comparable, frighteningly similar or overlapping, almost a reproduction of the works of a Greek choreographer, Demetrius Papanou, known as a curator of the opening and closing ceremonies of the Athens Olympics in 2004. In addition to the damage, then, is the mockery. How is it possible that the creators and organizers of the Carpi exhibition did not have the foresight to make earlier the necessary checks, and that such data went unnoticed in the exhibition catalog, which presents the works asserting the, quote, distinctive features of his poetics? Because, quote, Saltini abstracts from the real, and therefore his creations are, quote, imbued with spirituality, quote, true contemporary art with a religious subject, once again a rarity, even, quote, renewing the iconographic legacy and effective heritage of our cultural tradition. There is a culpa in vigilando on the part of those who know and must make such findings, so that an artistic work claiming to be a religious is truly faith-building art, and not an instrument of blasphemy and insult, directing rather to the confusion or nothingness of irreverence. Never more than in this case would a healthy exercise of evangelical prudence have been helpful in avoiding grotesque piousness toward the world. This is the last clarity to be provided and which has been lacking, carefully concealed in the folds of a communiqué that does not question, but absolves itself by pouring non-existent responsibilities outside in order to ultimately clear not only vilification but also a likely plagiarism within a church that too often now becomes a place easily offered to any depiction, even desecrating. We are not interested in legal actions, which will have their outcome in any case, but we are concerned with the healthy reaction of so many Catholics who in recent weeks we have miraculously discovered to be well vigilant and alerted, first and foremost by the valuable articles in the Nueva Bussola Quotidiana, now pointing out what can be truly called also a mockery. Therefore, we welcome the premature closure of a sad exhibition that has wounded the souls of many, so that it may serve as a warning from now on to protect the free expression of our belonging to the Church of always, in its true dimension of respect for the sacred, and for all the faithful who do not deserve to be mocked with scandal, but to be defended and led, even through art, to the contemplation of the Lord. Signed in Milan on the feast of Pope St. Leo IX, April 19th, 2024. Francesco Fontana, president of Iustitia in Veritate. Now, the point of that article is very quick, very simple. They did no investigations into this artist. That's the official line of reasoning from the bishop and the priest, into the things he has said publicly, into what his art contains. And then they came up with dubious excuses for what it contains, that it's essentially modern art that connects to our heritage as Italians and helps us to root ourselves in our faith, to think about our faith. None of that is true. In fact, I would suggest that when you see this kind of thing happening, because it happens every Lent in Europe somewhere, that what it is this art created by someone with deep disorders in their soul. After all, we're talking about someone here who an artist who publicly said that religious doctrine is the best food for atheism. Okay. When you see that being put in a parish or in a cathedral, that tells you a lot about the priest or the bishop who is responsible. That tells you everything, in fact, you probably need to know about them. It tells you that this priest who cannot see what is so wrong with these images, you have to ask them if they have the faith. If they can affirm what any priest would have been able to affirm without blinking simply 100 years ago. Or if they are perhaps living a double life. You know, it's funny that for once I'll paraphrase something Francis said positively. He condemned priests and bishops who lead these double lives. It was remarkable because he was actually talking about priests wrapped up in impurity. Of course, this is Italy. He could take direct action against this priest. Probably won't, though. Tells you everything you need to know about words versus actions. But that sentiment from that author is pretty straightforward. There was no due diligence taken if we take their statement at face value. And the laity still had enough of their faith to put a stop to this, even if they used methods that, as Catholics, we should never endorse. One wonders why this artist always goes after the Catholic Church and the Catholic faith, and not the faith, if you want to call it that, of the new Italians, we'll call them. Those who come from a land and follow, and they have a much more strident feeling about such things, and when their beliefs are mocked, they tend to react very forcefully, we'll say. One wonders why they never go after them, and why it's Catholics, always Catholics, that they go after. Let me know what you thought of that in the comments. I translated that myself using the best translating software I could, far better than the Google Chrome extension that I sometimes use. But even then, the syntax had some oddities to it. But let me know what you think of this in the comments. Do you expect to see this again next Lent? Why don't we see this stuff in American parishes or Canadian parishes? Is it because there's more than 10% of Catholics in the United States go to Mass? Let me know what you think of all this in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. And as always, pray for the Church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.